At 6:42 a.m. local time on October 9, 2025, a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the USS Dewey DDG-105, was conducting a routine freedom of navigation patrol near the Spratly Islands, just 87 nautical miles west of Palawan, Philippines, in what the U.S. calls international waters, but China insists are its own. At 6:46 a.m., the Dewey's AN/SPY-1D radar detected 4 surface contacts closing in at high speed from the northwest. Within minutes, 2 Type 052D Chinese destroyers and 2 Type 056A corvettes had surrounded the American ship in a tight diamond formation, a deliberate act of maritime intimidation. From the Dewey's bridge, the Chinese ships looked impossibly close. Barely 1,500 yards off the port bow, one of the destroyers flashed its signal lights. "You are entering Chinese waters. Change course immediately." The message was repeated in Mandarin and English, but the Dewey's captain didn't flinch. Instead, he ordered, "Maintain course and speed." Inside the Combat Information Center, sailors tracked every move of the Chinese flotilla. The Aegis system had already locked onto each vessel's radar signature, creating real-time firing solutions, just in case. Over the next 6 minutes, China's intimidation turned into provocation. One of the corvettes activated its Type 364 radar, a fire control system used only during combat targeting. That was no longer a shadowing maneuver, that was a threat. At 6:58 a.m., the U.S. destroyer's SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite detected multiple radar locks and laser rangefinder sweeps coming from the Chinese ships. In military terms, that meant only one thing. They were practicing missile engagement on the American vessel. For the U.S. sailors aboard the Dewey, the moment felt like a Cold War standoff at sea, except this time, it was real and dangerously close. By 7:02 a.m., 2 Chinese Z-9 helicopters lifted off from the destroyers, circling the Dewey at just 400 feet altitude, performing aggressive banking maneuvers directly above her deck. American deck crews watched quietly, but deliberately, cameras rolling. On the Dewey's deck, the Phalanx CIWS gun rotated automatically, tracking the Chinese helicopters, not firing, but reminding them what would happen if they came any closer. At that same moment, U.S. Pacific Fleet Command in Pearl Harbor was alerted. Within minutes, the nearby USS Preble DDG-88 and a P-8A Poseidon surveillance aircraft were redirected to the area. The U.S. Navy was now in full defensive posture, but China wasn't backing off. Their flagship, the Type 052 D Luoyang 3 destroyer, transmitted a chilling message over open radio. "U.S. warship, you are in Chinese territorial waters. Any hostile move will be met with force." The Dewey's captain responded with calm precision. "We are operating in accordance with international law and freedom of navigation. Any attempt to interfere will be considered unsafe and unprofessional." By 7:09 a.m., the situation was reaching a boiling point. 4 Chinese warships, 2 armed helicopters, 1 American destroyer, alone in contested waters. And then, the Chinese began to maneuver closer. Their formation tightened, boxing the Dewey in from all sides. One ship at her stern, another crossing her bow within 600 yards. A deliberate attempt to force her off course. Inside the combat center, the Aegis console's threat display was glowing red. The Dewey's weapons officer quietly armed the Mk-41 VLS, preparing for the unthinkable, a live engagement in the South China Sea. But what happened next would send shockwaves through the entire region. At 7:11 a.m., the tension in the South China Sea was thick enough to taste. The USS Dewey DDG-105 was surrounded, boxed in by 4 Chinese warships, 2 hovering attack helicopters, and a constant wall of radar pings. Every sailor on board knew one mistake, one wrong move, and this standoff could explode into the first naval battle between superpowers in the 21st century. Inside the Combat Information Center, the voice of the tactical action officer was calm but firm. "Weapons hold. Maintain tracking. If they cross our bow again, switched to defensive posture. At that same moment, over 2,000 miles away, the message reached U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Hawaii. Within minutes, Operation Sentinel Veil was activated, a rapid response protocol for naval encirclements. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets were scrambled from the USS Theodore Roosevelt, positioned 180 nautical miles east of Luzon. A P-8A Poseidon patrol aircraft locked its sensors on the Chinese ships from 32,000 feet, and an EP-3 electronic surveillance aircraft began collecting every radio, radar, and data transmission coming from the Chinese flotilla. By 7:19 a.m., the Dewey was no longer alone. On radar, faint blue icons began appearing, the Roosevelt's escort ships, moving in fast. But before reinforcements could arrive, the Chinese took a dangerous step further. One of the Type 056A corvettes suddenly increased speed, cutting directly across the Dewey's bow at just 480 yards, so close that its propeller wash rocked the U.S. destroyer, a deliberate near collision. On the bridge, alarms blared. "Collision alert! Close quarters contact!" The Dewey's captain immediately ordered hard starboard rudder, narrowly avoiding impact. The Chinese ship's crew could be seen waving flags, taunting, smirking. It was a clear provocation, and the Americans knew it. At 7:23 a.m., the Dewey transmitted a flash priority message: "Unsafe maritime maneuver by planned vessels. Request immediate air cover." Within 5 minutes, the sky above the South China Sea changed. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets from the Roosevelt roared into the area at Mach 1.2, streaking over the Dewey's mast at just 800 feet altitude. Their afterburners ripped through the morning haze, a thunderous American warning shot, short of war, but unmistakable in message: back off. The Chinese helicopters immediately broke formation, climbing away toward their destroyers. Moments later, both Chinese destroyers reduced speed, their crews suddenly silent on the radio. By 7:33 a.m., a US E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft established command over the scene, coordinating air and sea responses. Simultaneously, the USS Preble DDG-88 appeared on the horizon, charging toward the Dewey at 31 knots. The Chinese commander's bluff had been called. Now he was staring down not one, but 3 American warships, all with weapons hot, and a pair of Super Hornets circling overhead. For 10 long minutes, silence ruled the sea. Then, over the open radio frequency, the Chinese destroyer finally transmitted: "U.S. warship, you may proceed. We will maintain safe distance." That was diplomatic code for retreat. At 7:45 a.m., the Chinese ships turned starboard and began moving north, slowly, deliberately, but unmistakably withdrawing. The Dewey held position, her radar locked on every contact, until the last echo disappeared over the horizon. The standoff was over, but the message had already been sent, both ways. For Beijing, the encounter was meant to showcase dominance near the Philippines, a warning to Washington and Manila. Instead, it revealed something else entirely: America's unmatched readiness, coordination, and speed. Within 20 minutes, the U.S. Navy had transformed a trapped destroyer into the center of a fully armed strike group, backed by air superiority, satellite intelligence, and the most advanced electronic warfare assets on the planet. And in Beijing's command rooms, that reality was impossible to ignore. By 8:03 a.m., Chinese state media released a brief statement. PLA Navy conducted routine patrols in the South China Sea. All operations concluded safely. No mention of the near collision, no mention of the American response, just silence, the kind that follows a warning. Back aboard the Dewey, the crew finally exhaled. They had faced down 4 warships, 2 helicopters, and a geopolitical storm, and lived to sail another day. As the destroyer continued on its patrol, the captain's final words over the intercom captured the moment perfectly. "This is why we're out here. To remind the world, international waters belong to everyone." But deep within the Pacific Command's secure network, analysts were already preparing for what might come next, because the South China Sea had just witnessed another line being crossed, and next time, the world might not be so lucky. But while the Dewey sailed onward, far from the headlines, both navies quietly began preparing for the next encounter. Satellite imagery showed increased Chinese patrols near Fiery Cross Reef, while U.S. carrier strike groups troops adjusted their routes across the Philippine Sea, each side watching, waiting, recalibrating for what both knew was inevitable. Intelligence analysts now call it the silent escalation, a phase where every maneuver, every radar lock, and every intercepted transmission becomes part of an invisible chess game across the Indo-Pacific. The rules are unwritten, but the stakes are absolute. One miscalculation could transform a diplomatic dispute into a global crisis within minutes. Defense insiders warn that the next confrontation might not involve destroyers or corvettes, but cyber strikes, satellite blinding, or electronic warfare capable of paralyzing fleets before the first missile ever launches. And this time, it wouldn't just test who holds the strongest navy, but who commands the smarter network. Because in modern warfare, dominance is no longer measured by firepower alone, but by information, coordination, and control. The South China Sea has become the front line of a digital Cold War, one where the first shot may never be seen, but its impact will be felt across the globe. The Dewey's patrol ended that morning, but the larger mission continues. A mission to ensure that every ship, every crew, and every flag sailing in open waters remains free. The world watches, the oceans listen, and somewhere beneath the waves, the next move is already being made.